Hello everyone and welcome to the program Discuss, the program where we take a deep dive on critical look at the issues shaping our country today. Today we turn our attention to the spotlight on a subject that has generated debate across the country, the privatization of government agencies. Good afternoon, my name is Samuel Odi and thank you for joining in today's edition of Discuss. Over 90 government-owned enterprises and agencies are either earmarked for or undergoing privatization. The federal government insists this will reduce the cost of governance, improve efficiency, and attract private capital, but critics warn it could lead to job loss, higher cost of service, and even worsen inequality. So how does privatization affect ordinary Nigerians? And what impact does it have on the broader economy? That's the focus of today's Discuss. We went around and we got some reactions of Nigerians on this current subject matter, on the trajectory that we've seen over the years that Nigerians and Nigerian agencies have been privatized, fully privatized, or some partly privatized. Now we got some reactions and our correspondents went around asking Nigerians on their take on the subject matter, which is spurring a whole lot of debate from different sectors. So hear what Nigerians says. I'll bring you more update on the background of Nigeria and its privatization since the 1980s. So just get the report from our correspondent. We'll be right back. The announcement made recently by the Bureau of Public Enterprise marks one of the largest privatization exercises in Nigeria's history. The affected agencies cut across key sectors including transportation, agriculture, energy, and communications. Reactions, however, remained divided, while some economic experts argued that the move could usher in greater competitiveness and innovation. Critics warn it might lead to job loss and concentration of wealth in the hands of a few.
We were told that once it is bought over and it's being managed by a private firm, that we are going to have light all over in the country. But the reverse is the case. When they say they privatize anything of the federal government, they go over to bought over by their companies. You know, when you are in power and you decide to do something like that, you know, it's a selfish ambition that it cannot be acceptable by ordinary.
Some Nigerians maintain that privatization will also curb corruption and waste in the public corporations that have historically underperformed despite huge budgetary allocations, while some, on the other hand, has raised concerns about the structure of which the privatization is handled.
If you look at the structure of NEPA, the people that are running their affairs, are they able to sustain it? Are they able to do the right thing that is meant to be done? Is it still not the same old tactics of, you know, government interference? If my person is not there, I'm not interested in it.
As the nation anticipates the impact of the bold reform, the debate over privatization continues between hopes of economic revitalization and fear of social displacement. Samuel Odi for Global Television News. There you have it. Nigerians have reacted based on the journey so far of privatization in Nigeria. We're going to dive into that conversation shortly. So like I mentioned earlier before we got the takes of Nigeria, let's have a proper background on the subject matter. Since the 1980s, Nigeria has embarked on waves of privatization from telecommunications to power, oil and gas, and transport. Points to success story of the telecommunications sector, where the entrance of private investors revolutionized access to mobile phone, yet other sectors such as power supply remains troubled, with Nigerians still grappling with epileptic electricity despite privatization. Ordinary citizens express mixed feelings. Some say services have improved, others complain about rising costs and limited access. One, looking at it now, privatization started in the earliest in the 1980s under the Structural Adjustment Program, SAP in the Babangida administration. The Privatization and Communication Decree of 1988 was enacted. Secondly, we saw numbers of enterprises listed for privatization and commercialization. In 1988, about 111 public enterprises were listed for privatization and 34 others for commercialization. Between July 1988 and June 1993, about 88 of those listed were either fully or partially privatized. More recently, on the third note, totals by 2017, the National Council on Privatization reported that over 132 public enterprises has been privatized or reformed in 7 years. Another source says over 200 government-owned companies have been privatized over the past decade. 4 sectors involved in privatization have involved many sectors like cement, banking and finance, hotels, tourism, energy, construction services, agriculture, industrialization, manufacturing as well, have seen certain levels of reform. So on this back now, we are going to have to unpack this conversation, and to help us unpack this complex privatization, being joined in the live studios by Mr. Emmanuel Ozo Emina, a policy consultant. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on today's edition.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. So we've seen the trajectory of how privatization came into existence in Nigeria. So let's look at efficiency and social welfare. Does privatization truly make agencies more efficient? In terms, does it simply transform public wealth to private hands?
Well, I think before we delve into what the impact of privatization on the Nigerian economy as well as the Nigerian people, I think it would be good to look at the background.
Okay.
I listened to your introduction around privatization in the 1980s and all that.
Yes.
Clearly, privatization were designed by what you call the Washington Consensus.
Okay.
That's IMF and World Bank and their groups.
Okay.
In 1970s. I mean, they first tested it. The pilot were done in Latin America, in Argentina, in Chile, and all that. And then later they pushed it down to other countries in Asia, South Korea, Thailand, and what have you.
Okay.
Yeah, but essentially, it's a program or policy packaged by the Washington Consensus. Yeah, each time government speaks, I mean, the former military head of state, General Ibrahim Babangida, came to power on August 27th, 1985. And when he came, he started off what he called the Great Debate, the debate whether Nigeria should take IMF loan or not. And IMF loan, usually or World Bank loans, they come with conditionalities. And one of those conditionalities was, look, you're going to implement what they call structural adjustment program. Even as at then, even though then the government said, this is a homegrown economic policy, but it's not true. Because at that time, over 25 countries across Latin America, across Asia, and even Africa, I think about 4 or 5 countries in Africa were already implementing it, including Ghana.
Yes.
Yeah, because the thing about policies if policies are homegrown, if policies are imposed from the outside, what is it called debate? Very simple. Should government be involved in running and provision of services? Should they own public enterprise? That's the clear issue. The neoliberal economy, which is the predominant policy process designed by this Washington Consensus, is based on private capital, is actually what drives or what gives birth or rise to what you call privatization. It's not anything innovative, if you ask me, but it's simply saying, look, should government have commanding power or influence in provision of goods and services? And we have seen between, the Decree 25 of 1988 set up what is called Technical Committee on Commercialization, on Privatization and Commercialization. Yes. Yeah, TCPC. I remember, if my memory serves me right, the first chairman of that committee was Dr. Hamza Zayad, the late Dr. Hamza Zayad. Yes. And the listed companies, I mean, like NTA, NITEL and all that, were under what they call commercialization, meaning that, look, you need to make profit, government will give you subvention for what they call capital projects. But some other enterprises that were listed were for sale, I mean, in the oil and gas sector, in the banking sector. Mind you know, First Bank, which started off, I think, as Bank of West Africa, Union Bank, UBA, Pan-Africa. I mean, some regional or later state government had set up banks. I mean, I remember we had a Cooperative and Commerce Bank owned by the old Eastern region. You know, so we had Progress Bank owned by Imo State. You had the Mercantile Bank owned by the old Cross River State. So in the banking and finance sector, I mean, government owned part of these assets. So they sold it off. I mean, they privatized, you could say they privatized it. Yeah. I mean, that's how Savannah Bank, First Bank, Union Bank, UBA, Pan-African Bank, Bank of the North, you know, there were quite a whole lot of them. Then you had tourism. I mean, Sheraton Hotels, incidentally, was owned. There's Le Meridian, which you now call Nikon Luxury. Even Nikon Insurance and Nigeria Insurance. So there were a whole lot of whatever they. I mean, between 1988 till date, they have sold off or divested or whatever of quite a lot of corporations. What do you call Konoye? I mean, Konoye, Oando, Photo, they were all owned by government. And how did they acquire some of them, including Daily Times? Daily Times was a leading media group. I mean, in 1972, there was a indigenization decree by government where it took over, it indigenized foreign companies that were operating in Nigeria, took it over and owned it. By 1978, as a result of the apartheid crisis in South Africa, the British owned shares in some of these in the oil sector were taken over by the government. That was an indigenization decree of 1978 by the Obasanjo regime. He took it over, and then because of the British policy in the apartheid South Africa. Yes. So what the key thing is, the question is how has it fared?
Yes.
Yeah. If I ask you, if we take a list of companies that were privatized, I can tell you over 50% of them today are moribund. We have Newsprint, a manufacturing company out of Kiboku. I mean, Newsprint, if you go to around Cross River area, because they've got a very good rainforest.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have a lot of wood. Newsprint or paper actually comes from pulp. If you take a wood, process it, that's the paper. It's moribund. Aluminium Smithing Company at Ekolabasi. Josh Steel Rolling Mill, Alaja Steel Rolling Mill, Castina Steel Rolling Mill, Oshobo Steel, they are all dead, moribund.
Yes.
But Nigerian Sugar Company at Bashita. So the question is this. I mean, over 50% of what they claim to have sold, or what they sold or privatized, are dead. So, can you tell me that was the best of policies? Because each time we speak about these things, the question is that, what about people who work for those companies? The most pitiable part was Nigerian Airways, Nigerian Shipping Lines. Were there. And till today, they have not even paid the gratuity of people who worked for Nigerian Airways. It's still in public debate from time to time. So that shows you either the people who drafted this policy and the people who implemented it didn't even understand what it's all about. But the major driver was, look, privatize, on that basis we'll give you loan.
Okay. looking at it now, privatize on that basis to give loan. That means that's what was coming from.
No, that was the key drive.
That was the key drive from that's IMF, International Monetary Fund.
Yeah.
So looking at it now, from all of these loans and all of this privatization is just to get loans. How do you think it has impacted the life of the citizens of Nigeria?
Yeah, but the point is that I have followed this debate. I recall in 1986 when the debate, and that was when Babangida threw it open. They called it a great debate.
Yes.
Yeah, but incidentally, that Babangida administration was not sincere. Ask me why? He threw that debate hoping that if there were overwhelming majority of Nigerians who say don't take the loan, don't implement structural adjustments, he was going to listen, but simply was buying time. He wanted to create an impression that he was a leader who listens, but that wasn't.
Okay.
This thing was simply, oh, let me keep them busy, engage them, and then take my decisions. And that was what happened. If you look at the entire package, in fact, I'm not sure across the world that you have success. The success rate for privatization is almost zero, apart from Europe. I mean, the Thatcher administration there in the UK privatized quite a lot of state-owned enterprises. Yeah, from British Airways to the rail transport and what have you, and it seems to have worked, perhaps because of environmental factors.
Okay.
The challenge in Nigeria could have been environmental. If I ask you now, when was the last time you saw a NITEL line? They sold NITEL. NITEL was the state-owned telecommunication company.
Yes.
British Telecom was sold, but till today it's still functional. It still provides services. But NITEL, where is it? That's the question to ask. So if you take a list now, time won't permit us to list all the companies that were sold.
Yes.
I can bet you, if not over 65% are moribund. And you know what that means?
Yes. Well, yes, I think what that means. But now, let's look at this other angle. Do you think all of this privatization has a political charade around it?
No, but it's simply politics. Politics in terms of you have people in out there at the within the Washington consensus.
Politics is not a bilateral relation with the country and the IMF.
No. When I say politics, politics is about public policy decision making. So you can't say it's devoid of politics. It's all political. Political in the sense that the West on their own part may be looking for a way of holding down the economy of developing countries.
Okay.
Yeah, the question to ask, how did China developed within 40 years? If you go back to China, in the last whatever development you have in China happened in the last 40 years.
From within
now the question is that how come when it comes to relations of the West and Saudi Arabia, they are not demanding reform, they are not demanding democracy? I heard a governor the other day saying in Saudi Arabia that they control preaching. But that governor refused to understand that Saudi Arabia is not a democracy.
Okay.
It's a theocracy. It's not a democracy. So how come if you watch development in China, China has the second largest number of billionaires.
Yes.
But half of the Chinese companies that are currently on are state-owned, including the construction companies operating in Nigeria. They're state-owned.
Yes.
Yeah. So perhaps what we need to do is to go back and say our problem is it privatization or looking at the key factors that are creating impediment to development or service delivery in Nigeria. That's the question. And there are also services you can't privatize. Say for instance, I mean, government has a duty to ensure that people who live in the city or in any community have access to pipe-borne water,
light and proper road.
Yeah, so when you privatize water and people don't have access to water, you could have, because it's connected to public health.
Public health, yes.
Yeah. Again, as we speak today, the London City Council, the local government in London, municipal council, have houses. They are into property provisions.
Yeah.
Where people who are unable to afford live. In the US, the same thing. City councils have houses. In London, as we speak today, at the beginning of every school term, each child gets, in public schools, they get sets of uniform, sets of books, and sets of shoes to wear, including winter jacket. It's delivered to the child. So the point is this, I think half of the policy making processes as we have it today are not based on any existential reality.
Okay.
That's one. Two, they are not, the people who take this decision do not compare. They don't do, you could say, information sharing.
Yeah.
I mean, ask them. I listened to the former Finland ambassador to Nigeria speak on a radio program in Nigeria some years ago. She said, look, any child that is born in Finland for the first 2 years, it's the government's responsibility. From the hospital, they will provide every single thing that child is going to need. So do you have social services here? The answer is no. And so each time we focus on taxation, each time we focus on privatization, some of these policies are actually, it doesn't deliver anything. It's not delivering, because government, if you read the constitution, it says the government, the main aim of government is to provide welfare and security of the people.
Primary assignments.
Their primary assignments, their fundamental role.
Yeah.
So if you take a look at half of the policies, ask, is it aligning with this?
That's democracy.
That's the 1999 constitution. Does it align?
Okay, we'll get into that on finding out the way forward, but let's look about privatization and also concerns around employment, because most Nigerians, from the reports we had, they've talked about job loss and all of that. Yeah. If this continues now, we're looking the Bureau of Public Enterprise made mention of the fact that around 91 government agencies will be privatized, and we're still looking to see what all of those agencies will be. But from the report, it says it's going to cut across transportation, power, agriculture, and so on. So looking at it now, will this create more jobs, or is going to hamper the percentage of unemployment?
The new owners, the first thing they will prioritize will be profit maximization.
Okay, which might lead to job loss?
Definitely there will be job loss. And we've mentioned about Nigerian Airways. Where is it? You know how many people who worked in Nigerian Airways, a Nigerian shipping line company, how many people who worked for that? At Okwibuku, how many people who worked? Even the pensions of those people, nobody's talking about it. Or the aluminium smelting company. There are quite a lot of them.
Pojo.
Even at Jokuta. I mean, somebody bought a Jokuta. I mean, a Jokuta was privatized. And then where is it today? Alaja Steel in Warri was privatized. Where is it today? There's a paper and pulp company at Iworo, somewhere in Osun State. Where is it today? Justin Rolling Mill, where is it today? So the point is that, and the impact of this on the economy as we speak is huge. It means that 100% of our steel needs are imported.
Yeah.
So what would have happened? And this was investment by government.
Yes.
That was supposed to impact on the economy
positively.
And today we go to China without knowing that half of the Chinese economy, or more than half, is still state owned. And they manufacture for the entire world. So the problem would have been a fault with the system we should have addressed, and not necessarily those enterprises. Because if Chinese state-owned enterprises deliver services, so how come ours do not deliver services? Okay,
do you think it's the government's fault, or based on the privatization now that led to the job loss, or the fact that before the privatization was done, there were some Lucanos in the government agencies that wasn't properly taken care of before all of this private?
No, the moment somebody buys a company, I mean, if you're going to buy over a company, you are buying assets and liabilities. And these new owners will sign off. We are going to take over everything. And the moment that comes, in most cases, the first thing is asset stripping. I mean, you have the media company, for instance, owned by government, that owns offices, bureau in London, in Germany, in Bonn, Germany, in New York, and all that. So the new owner sells off those properties. In fact, there are no checks inserted in MOU on, look, you won't do this. If you do this, you have violated. If you don't pay up pension of people who have worked there for 30 years, 40 years, you know, so the entire thing, if you look at the MOU, I think there were a lot of lacunas, especially around people who have worked for that company, who deserves. One is New Nigeria. The retirees of New Nigeria till today are yet to be paid. I saw a press statement a few days ago on that. So the point is simply this. Are there enough safety measures in place? But because you have sold it, the man does what he wants to do. You know, I keep coming back to Nigerian Airways till today. I mean, if you meet anybody who has worked for Nigerian Airways, he will tell you, look, he has not received pension in the last how many years? But it was sold to an individual. Somebody bought it, or people, some group of companies bought it. And so where are they? And we're now talking of, we need a national carrier. The British Airways was privatized, but it's still flying. And the company is still growing. So it's a question of, are we ready for privatization? That's the first question, given our environment and peculiar challenges. If you ask me, the answer is no. Especially some key sectors where services to citizens are very, very necessary.
You know, as much as the government is looking to, you know, dive into privatization, which they didn't obviously start today, but they have said it's for the citizens in terms of infrastructure development and infrastructure development and job creation and all of that. But now, do you think that the government is not creating an avenue that would help citizens to have, you know, a backing or a policy that would make sure that they are being covered, like you rightly mentioned, Nigerian Airways now, which is almost like the subject matter right now. It's gone. So now, what can the government do now? What clause can they add into whatever contract that will be signed that would have the Nigerian people, you know, looked at properly and well taken care of, if those companies are properly privatized?
No, the truth is that if the government is safe for infrastructure, it means they want to raise money. That's simply what it is, because they are going to sell it off at a market at a price, and the new owners will pay them. So how do they invest the money? Ask the ones that were privatized in the past. We listed over 200. So what did we get from it? Mind you, these are owned by the people of Nigeria. So can anybody point to me the infrastructure that they were used for, or they were the investment where I can find it? I can't remember. The banks that were privatized, the hotels and tourism infrastructure that were privatized or owned by, I mean, that were handed over to public people. Even let's look at the power sector. Is it efficient as a result of privatization of the 11 distribution companies? So these are the key questions. So the thing is this: if government tells me, look, we need to raise revenue, there are other ways of raising revenue. I'm not sure you must sell off what is generally owned by the country just because you want to raise revenue. I mean, China has provided us a template on how you can efficiently run a state-owned corporation. I mean, the evidence is there. So the question of, do we have patience to learn,
to build that and to learn,
and then ask them, what were your benchmark? How did you do it? But invariably, the moment you sell off, you lose control. I mean, it's a reality.
Let's look at this other part now around electricity. You know, a lot of persons didn't even know that privatization has started way in the back in the 80s. You know, some individuals were focused on the part during President Olusegun Obasanjo, former president, was, you know, privatized NEPA from NEPA to Power Holding Company, and then we've seen bets of other disco companies now. Looking at the the power sector now, how do you think this privatization have actually impacted Nigerian economy and its citizens?
Okay, to begin with, when the 11 distribution companies and the dams and the power companies were sold.
Yes.
I mean, you had the one in Sapele Delta. You had one at in power companies that were sold off.
Yes.
Gencos, generating companies that were sold off. You know, the only thing government owns 100% at the moment is the transmission company of Nigeria, TCN.
TCN, yes.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
Yes.
Yeah, because of they manage the network infrastructure. Even though federal government, I'm told, still owns about 41%
yes.
in distribution companies.
Yes.
Yola, Disco,
yes,
has been the people who bought it declared force majeure in 2015-2016. So the thing was gone. I think about before 2017 they declared force majeure. Ibadan Disco is under AMCON, and I think they are thinking about selling it off because they couldn't manage it.
Yes.
And from time to time, Abuja Disco has been taken over has been converted into what they call debt to equity, because they were owing a bank, they couldn't pay, there's no money in the bank, and they couldn't pay, and the bank has to take over. Yeah, with the help of AMCON.
Yes.
Yeah, so you have what is called debt to equity management. So they've taken it over. So the initial investors are all gone.
They're all gone. Yes.
They have a new management. So that shows you that model
is down on the common man right now.
Definitely. So that shows you that model is not working. In fact, there are maybe 1 or 2 or 3 distribution companies that you could say are really successful. That's the truth.
Okay.
And then again, what was the process or the conditions of these sales? How competitive were the bidding process? Because that's another thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so each time there's a bid in Nigeria, one of the things I have noticed is that you don't find global companies participating. So what you have most times is SPVs, special purpose vehicles will emerge. In fact, I think one of the directors of one of the Discourse, I watched him some 5-6 years ago on the television. He said they didn't do their due diligence. And I remember one of the Nigerian entrepreneurs had accused them that when they bought those Discourse, they thought they got an oil block. So lack of understanding of the sector could also have been the problem. I listened to a former chairperson of Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission say, look, now what we would have done was to develop a power market before that privatization, because up till now, I can tell you for free that we don't have a power market. And if you don't have a market, you cannot privatize. So we should have built a market first.
Okay.
A market that is self-driven. I read a Wismark Rawani, speak a few days ago, and he was talking about the level of debt in the sector, and was saying, look, if you don't rescue the power sector, it might likely be a problem in future. From Jonathan to Buhari to present administration, they kept rescuing them from time to time. So it's either, I believe, ab initio, we didn't have the power market. That's what we would have developed. Because if you develop a market, it will be self-driven. An example is the mobile telecommunications. When because the market is there, there was a crowding out of Nitel, and they are not there. Because they couldn't play.
Yes.
So you can call that, and then the companies that are making it, the 3 current companies that are playing in that sector, we are not public sector companies. They were private companies.
Yes.
So what I think would have happened, you should have allowed NITEL be. So if they can't compete, they will die a natural death.
Yes.
But there are some sectors where you don't have other players and that are of very national importance to the economy, so the government must keep it and keep running it. Because if you say, oh, you're privatizing the electricity network, because you know the value of the national grid, and that's why you're keeping it.
Okay, with all of these lessons learned now, and the fact that a whole lot needs to, is whatever decision that is being taken up there from the presidency and those decision makers in the House of Representatives and the Senate, it trickles down to the common man in the street, someone in the market, and all of that. So now, how can all of this narrative now be changed? Because number one now, like we rightly said earlier when the program started, that the primary and core responsibility of democracy is for the citizen. Then what can be done differently? Is full privatization the answer, or part privatization?
Yeah, no, it all depends on the sector. We need to do sector by sector analysis. The first thing is that, let's look at water companies.
Yes.
The water companies must provide potable water. If you don't provide potable water, we're going to have an outbreak of disease. And managing public health. I mean, if you have a health crisis, say cholera, for instance, cholera outbreak. So what are you going to do?
Which is hitting the land already.
So you can take a decision either to prioritize public health by ensuring that people get clean access to clean water, because that's the only way you can reduce. Or you now say, okay, let's buy drugs.
Okay.
Because let's buy medicine.
Take bad water and then
but investing in medicine, one of the things you're going to have is that people won't be able
to purchase.
There'll be a gap. No, there will be a gap in productivity. People who are sick can't work. You won't be able to collect taxes, and the revenue from taxes is going to go down.
Yes.
And you're still going to ensure that you manage this public health. So it's a question of taking. Each sector has to be evaluated on its own merit. It's not just, oh, we need to raise revenue, we are tired, we need to reduce cost of product. If you need to reduce cost of governance, where to start is from the policy makers.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, somebody wakes up, I read a governor who said, I hired over 5,000 aides because I want to create jobs. No, that's not the way to create jobs. What does the aid do? What can I see their job descriptions of each of them? Do you have duplication of job functions? If you have, then eliminate it. So that's where it should start.
Yes.
So most times when you listen to the idea of high cost of governance,
yes,
it should begin with me. So if I'm an elected official, what decisions am I taking running my office to ensure I reduce the cost of governance? That's where it starts from. And that's where what countries do.
Okay.
I mean, there's no rocket science about it. So we must look at each sector and say, prioritize it. What sectors are social services? And you stick, social services sector, you can't privatize it. If you go to the UK, for instance, the most efficient schools, whether at basic level, secondary level, or university level, are public schools.
Public schools, yes.
There's huge investment, but in Nigeria, it's not the issue. And you have cases of people who are in government, politicians owning these schools. So someone has argued somewhere that they deliberately run down the public schools so that people can come and patronize their
private schools,
expensive private schools. Yeah, because I mean, look at it. Someone in government owns a school, and that school is efficient. That school has whatever you can think of in terms of infrastructure. But public schools that are supposed to be maintained by taxpayers' money is in dilapidated condition. So that shows you from day one there was no intention of ensuring we have viable public schools. So the decision to take is there, and it's not rocket science.
Okay, well, let's go on a very quick break, and then when we return back, the discourse continues. Stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining, this is Discourse here on Global Television, channel 365 on DSTV. I am Samuel Odi. You've missed, if you just joined, you've missed the first 40 minutes of this conversation, but you still have, you know, the latter part, which is always sweetest. As my mom will always say, the down part of the soup is more sweeter. I'm having a great conversation around privatization, the impacts on Nigerians, and the broader economy. So at the bottom line, we saw that just a couple of days ago, we saw the Bureau of Public Enterprise making mention of the fact that around 91 government agencies will be partly and fully privatized. So now we just want to narrow it down, given the fact that it started in the early 80s, to see how all of this privatization has actually impacted the life of a common Nigerian man. When I mean the Nigerian man, those in the market, those on the streets, and everyone generally, and how it's impacting the economy in terms of growth. I've been having this conversation with a policy consultant in the person of Emmanuel Ozemena, who is still here with me. So, Mr. Emmanuel, looking at this whole trajectory of how everything happening, and you know, you rightly mentioned we rarely see agencies abroad coming to bid to, you know, take full charge of these industries or sectors that would be privatized. Do you think, if privatization should actually happen, what sector do you think should be privatized in terms of looking at the current situation of Nigerian economy and the high cost of living?
I think the first, I would suggest we do the first things first.
Okay.
What is called the first principle. Do we have an assessment report of the already privatized over 200 enterprises that have been privatized since 1988? Let's look at them. Which one is moribund? And where are they?
Having an audit.
And what is the cost on the nation? Because every failure of business has
a cost.
There's a cost implication on the nation. That's one.
Yes.
Before we proceed. So until that audit is taken, until that audit report is shared with the people of Nigeria, I think it will also be doing the wrong thing and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
Because the learnings from that audit report or post-privatization assessment report would have helped us to know what did we do right and what did we do wrong. How come British Telecom was privatized and it's still a going concern till date? British Airways was privatized and it's still a going concern till date. So how come we couldn't? How come Ethiopian Airline has managed a publicly owned airline for several years, over 60 years or thereabouts, with no record of crash, and it's still a going concern? In the last administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, we saw where the proposed Nigerian Air Nigeria was to be managed by Ethiopian Airlines, a public-owned company by another country. So it's either we are inefficient as a country in managing things, whether it's public or private. So we need to learn new
avenues,
new threats,
yes.
new attitude of how to manage things efficiently and productively. Because if we handed over Nigerian Airways, for instance, to a company and it became moribund, what happened? And Ethiopian Airline is still there. Nigerian Airways and Ghana Airways were set up at the same time.
Same time, yes.
As part of what they call British Airlines. Because it was under the colonial administration. So the point is that, and if you look at half of this public enterprise that is being privatized was set up by the British colonial government. But the post-independence era, they were able to manage it,
yes.
And then they now want to sell it off because of Washington consensus policy direction, because they are touching the loan, say, look, if you don't do this, we will give you the loan. If you don't do this reform, in quote, we will give you this. So we need to step back and do a reflection, introspection, and say, look, what do we need to do? What are the options? Can we ask China, how have you been able to manage this your process of having a mixed economy? And you have the highest number of billionaires after United States.
Yes.
Yeah, so what has happened? So what's the difference? What we haven't done very well in this country is to learn from our friends who are successful. We haven't done that.
So you think doing that actually is going to be the answer to most of the challenges?
No, you need to do that audit. That audit, it's very, very important. Because if you don't do it, you are going to also repeat that mistake of what has just happened in the past. That audit is very, very important. It's not about selling, and then you can delay it. Just understand what is the fundamental challenge. How many companies did we privatize, and how many of them are still functional, going concern? In the steel sector, it's 0. And steel is the base of development.
Okay.
I think yesterday also I saw a report in the Punch newspapers. Dangote was speaking on a video. He said, look, that Ajokuta will never ever start. And he listed, I think, about 5 reasons.
Why?
Fundamental reasons why that will not. Do you know how much that has been invested there? How much that has been invested there? And it's not a growing concern. So the point is, it's not about BPE speaking, but can BPE tell us, oh, we sold this hotel, is still working. We sold this airline, we sold this shipping line, is still working. Because if you sell, it's not working, that means jobs of Nigerians are off.
And the unemployment rate keeps increasing. And then we still have graduates coming out of school, and then the number of
every year I think we produce over 700,000
graduates,
new graduates who gets into the job market.
At that light,
I think about 700,000.
Yeah, we have NYC coppers also who are also coming into the local market.
So the thing is that if you want to build a robust economy, sit down and do a proper assessment.
But what do you think is the major challenge why Nigeria hasn't gotten it right in terms of privatization?
No. I mean, when you are privatizing, you have 2 options. You could say, let's go to IPO. IPO is initial public offer. So in that case, if, for instance, you are holding a 100% share stake in a company, you could say, we want to sell it off. People, I mean, it will be evaluated how much is share and how many units of shares should the company have. Ordinary people can invest. Because if you are handing it over to people, I mean, through bidding, sometimes it's public, what I call public placement, private placement. So let's look at the refineries. If you want to privatize the refineries, what should be the best option? Put it initial public offer. Let Nigerians own it. Because when Nigerians own it, they come to the AGM and ensure that the company works. But if you call one technical partner, hand it over, or some special purpose vehicles or consortiums, we have seen it can work. It's not working.
All right, our time is not just our friend right now. There's just so much to still talk about around privatization. But I want to say a very big thank you to you. But before I let you go quickly, just in 2 minutes, give us the way forward and how Nigeria can actually, diversify properly and also have Nigerians have their job. And if tilting towards full privatization of some government agencies is the way forward, what can the government do so as the common Nigerian man who is working in any of those parastatals wouldn't have his or her job lost just immediately after privatization is done?
What we need to do, I think that audit looks like the first principle.
Okay.
You must have that audit, and then you must do sector by sector analysis.
Okay.
How important is this sector
Okay.
to government being able to provide social services? And government should also not shy away from its responsibility. Where it needs to provide social services, it must. I mean, government must build schools, public schools, to ensure that people who are unable, who are within some certain economic class have access to education. Even doing that will even reduce virtually a lot of vices you have in the society. Because an educated mind will be a better citizen, prepared, you know, than someone who feels he has no access to literacy or education. Yeah. Right. So government must play its role according to the constitution. Welfare and security of the citizen. That's their role. That's their role. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel Ozemena, for taking our time to join us on today's edition of Discuss. My pleasure. Thank you. Yes, privatization remains one of Nigeria's most controversial economic policies. For some, it is the key to unlocking efficiency, competitiveness, and investment. For others, it is a painful shift that places profit above people. What is clear is that the impact is not uniformed. While the telecom sector thrive, powered and fair remain everyday struggle. The real challenge lies in creating a balance, ensuring that privatization delivers value not just to investors and government confers, but to the ordinary Nigerian who should be at the heart of the economic policies. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of Discuss. My name is Samuel Odi. I'll see you again as we discuss further. Bye for now.